Hey everybody, welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Hurlock, and today's show is all about the Southern Hemp Expo. It took place down there in Raleigh, North Carolina this past weekend. I took a drive down there and I recorded interviews on location in Raleigh. We're going to talk to Morris Beegle. He's the founder of the company that produces the Southern Hemp Expo as well as the NoCo Hemp Expo in Colorado. This company is called WAFBA. We are for better alternatives. I'm also going to talk to Hunter Buffington. She's the executive director at the Hemp Feed Coalition. There's a lot happening in that space right now that I think you need to know about. Let's see, we'll also have a few nuggets of hemp news, and I will recap my journey to Raleigh. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, IND Hemp. Are you using hemp seed oil in your CBD tinctures and topicals? Are you looking for a consistent, reliable, high-quality, American-grown and processed hemp seed oil? IND Hemp in Montana is cold pressing grain daily and uses a 3-stage filtration process to a 1-micron polishing filter for their ultra-pure hemp seed oil. Ultra-pure hemp seed oil has consistent, superior clarity with no sediment. 5 gallons or 5,000 liters, you can confidently source what you need at indhemp.com. All right, just a few nuggets of hemp news this week. This first one is from the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, and this is their consensus on Delta-8 THC. I'm going to read it in its entirety. It's short, but I think you need to hear it. The Delta-8 THC molecule occurs naturally in the cannabis plant in very small amounts. While there may be no issues with the cannabinoid itself, the conversion of CBD or Delta-9 THC into Delta-8 THC often utilizes light hydrocarbons and acids, such as sulfuric acid, as solvents. These solvents are often found as contaminants in the products because the producer is not taking the steps to ensure they are washed out of the final product. Furthermore, for many of these compounds, there are no mandated testing requirements, and they will not appear on even legitimate certificates of analysis. The conversion of CBD into Delta-8 THC is more complicated than converting Delta-9 THC into Delta-8 THC. This process results in a number of molecular isomers that do not exist in nature. There are many peaks in the lab analyses of these products that are unidentifiable. We have no knowledge of how these isomers behave in the body. For the most part, the companies that are making these products are untrained garage chemists who are not likely to be following GMP standards. While there may be a few reputable laboratories and companies who are producing Delta-8 THC, this does not negate the fact that we do not know if these many isomers produced during the conversion of CBD to Delta-8 THC are safe for human consumption. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. All right, this next story is out of Wisconsin. It's on Madison.com. Headline reads, Wisconsin Hemp Program to transition to federal agency next year. After 4 years as a state-run pilot program, Wisconsin's hemp industry will transition next year to the USDA, which is expected to save growers money through the elimination of state licensing fees and the potential to use private sampling and testing. Officials with the State Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, which has administered the state pilot hemp program since it started in 2018, announced late last week that the program would shift to the federal agency starting January 1st. All right, this next one comes from Minnesota. This is from the local CBS affiliate up there, which I guess is in the Twin Cities. The headline says, Hemp Maize Minnesota is almost surely one of a kind. It talks about a farmer. His name is Ted Gallaty. He's the owner and operator of Hemp Maize Minnesota, and it's located at Willows Keep Farm just south of Zumbrota on Highway 5. As far as I know, he says, it's the only hemp maize in Minnesota and probably in the United States. And so, of course, I need to stop right there because we've got a hemp maze here in Pennsylvania, thanks to the cover crop coach, Steve Groff. So look out, Minnesota. You've got some competition in Pennsylvania. All right, so there you go, some news nuggets. But I want to tell you a little bit about my trip to Raleigh, North Carolina. So if you've been listening to the show these past few weeks, you know that I was invited down to the Southern Hemp Expo to give like a presentation about my recent national hemp tour. I was invited by Morris Beegle himself. And so I left Friday morning, like at 4 a.m, and I drove for hours. It was like about a 7-hour drive from where I am here in Pennsylvania. I went through DC and Virginia and finally got to Raleigh, maybe around 11:30, and I checked in to the hotel. I went up to my room, I got all ready, and I was gonna go to the expo for a while, and then I was gonna come back to my room and continue working on my presentation. I wanted to make sure that I had everything right, so that's what I was doing. And I was down there at the expo around 12:30, and I went into one of the panel discussions, and there up on stage it was Doug Fine, the hemp writer, moderating a discussion with Hunter Buffington from the Hemp Feed Coalition and Chad Rosen from Victory Hemp. And it was a fascinating discussion. And as I'm watching it, my phone rings, and it's Morris Beegle. I'm like, oh, holy cow! He's calling me up to welcome me to the thing. And he's like, hey man, what's up? I'm like, oh, I'm just up here checking out this discussion with Doug and Hunter and Chad. He's like, oh, how's your presentation? How about your presentation? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all set to do that tomorrow at noon, Saturday at noon. And he's like, dude, no, it's today at noon. And I look, and it's already 12:30. I'm like, oh. I don't know what happened. I apologized profusely to him, but this whole time now I've been under the impression that I was going to give it on Saturday, the 4th, but I clearly got mixed up. It was supposed to be Friday the 3rd. So apparently there were people waiting for me to give the presentation, and I apologize to all of you for being a total no-show on Friday. Morris was very, very gracious, and he said that, it's not that big of a deal. He can fit me in on Saturday. And so he did. He put me up on the expo stage at 1 o'clock on Saturday, right after Cameron McIntosh from the U.S. Hemp Builders Association and American Cast Hemp, after he gave his presentation. So that all worked out, but oh man, I felt really, really stupid. But not contagious, because I was wearing a mask. A lot of people weren't wearing masks, but some were. So it's still so freaky to be around lots of people, right? I don't know if this is just me or whatever, but I'm just ready for all of this to be over. But I still want to, maintain a level of safety, because I've got family members with compromised immune systems and all that. So I got to play it safe. Anyway, so I was at the expo Friday, and I walked around and I talked to people, and I met a bunch of people that I had only ever interviewed over Zoom, like Bruce Dietzen, the guy who made the car from hemp. I met him in person. Super cool. And I ran into a lot of people that I met on our hemp tour this summer. I saw Andrew and Jacob Bish from Bish Enterprises and Hemp Harvest Works. They just unveiled this multi-height hemp harvester. It's pretty cool. I'll have a video of that on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. And I'm going to be talking to Andrew about the harvester in a couple of days, so you might hear that on the show next week. Anyway, my presentation on Saturday turned out pretty good. It was basically like me giving a slideshow talking about the trip in sort of a chronological order. And it was my first sort of endeavor of trying to explain this trip to people in a public fashion. I think I will be doing some more of this. My goal is to turn that presentation into a video documentary, which we will show at the Pennsylvania Hemp Summit in November. So more details on that later. So the expo itself was fantastic. I was able to catch a few different panel discussions and symposiums and all that. One that I particularly enjoyed was about carbon credits and carbon sequestration, moderated by Bruce Dietzen, and the panel included Ben Dobson from Hudson Hemp, Cameron McIntosh from Marichon Cast Hemp, and Jesse Miller from Neogen Corporation. I made an audio recording of that symposium, and I will have that available for you at lancasterfarming.com. You should listen to it. There's a lot of great discussion about the future of carbon credits and how farmers will get paid to sequester carbon. I also hope to have Ben Dobson as a guest on this show sometime in the next few weeks, months, something like that. But I made lots of great contacts there at the expo, and I have people to talk to on the podcast for like the next 30 years. So thank you to the hemp community for embracing what I'm doing. I am just continually amazed with sort of like the caliber of people that I get to talk to. So yes. Anyway, just on a side note, Morris Beegle gave me a ticket to a Primus concert. Now, I'm not really like a Primus concert guy, but I went and checked it out, and yeah, it was intense. It was right there, like 2 blocks away from the hotel, so it was a pretty easy thing. It was an outdoor amphitheater, and yeah, lots of people, more people than I've been around in a long time. But anyway, I checked it out. I had the experience, because that's what life's all about, is having experiences, right? All right. Anyway, let's get into our interviews. We're going to first check in with Morris, and then we'll hear from Hunter Buffington. Here we go. Morris Beegle, welcome back to our podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Eric. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for making it out to Southern Hemp Expo.
Yeah, that's where we are now. We're here just above the expo floor. I just gave my presentation about the National Hemp Tour, so thank you for inviting me to do that. And so what's your take of the expo this year?
Well, like our NoCo Hemp Expo, it's come with challenges because, well, we thought we were going to be really at the tail end coming out of the pandemic, and when we launched this in May and June, things were looking really good, and then all of a sudden in July, here comes the Delta variant, and things have become more challenging since then. But we have a good turnout of exhibitors. We have a pretty good turnout of attendees, all things considered. And we've had 3 days worth of really solid programming on 3 stages. So the programming and education for this event, I think, has been stellar and one of the better events that we've been able to do.
Cool. Can you talk about like maybe one of your favorite breakout sessions, or what did you really get a lot out of this year?
Well, there's been several like new participant keynotes that came in this year. One being Dr. Uma Donabalan. And Dr. Uma is great. She's a global expert on the cannabinoid system, endocannabinoid system, been practicing health and wellness for 40 years, Harvard graduate. She was excellent, and she's great energy and a very solid participant this year. And then we had Ben Dobson from Hudson Hemp, Hudson Carbon, gave a great presentation on regenerative agriculture and quantifying carbon in the soil and what's coming down the road with carbon credits. So those are 2 of my favorite ones thus far.
Cool. Yeah, I have heard about Ben Dobson and the work they're doing at Hudson Hemp, but finally I was able to meet him here this week, and I'd like to get him on our podcast in the next coming weeks. So yeah, what else? Any surprises this year?
Not really. I think that we were pretty prepared for anything that was going to be thrown at us, and there's nothing that pops out as like, wow, we didn't see that coming. That's a big surprise. Other than, well, I guess there was Hurricane Ida that happened last week, which did affect some of our attendance. There's a couple of exhibitors that couldn't make it up that were going to be coming from Louisiana, but Unfortunately, we've got these weather situations that continue to happen and are probably not going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, sad but true.
Yeah.
This is the first Southern Hemp Expo in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Correct.
Would you do it here again?
Potentially, yeah. I would say that one of the highlights of this is the city has been super supportive, the convention center has been super supportive, and Visit Raleigh, which is their tourist division, they've all been very gracious, very supportive, and we've had a better treatment from them than probably any other city that we've been in thus far. So from a hospitality standpoint, there's no question that we would certainly consider coming back here.
Cool. I noticed there's a statue of Sir Walter Raleigh outside the convention center, and he's all decked out in hemp. Were you behind that?
Yeah, so one of the things is they have this statue out in front of the convention center, and a lot of trade shows and conventions will dress him up. They allow him to be dressed up, and they're like, hey, if you want to hemp out Sir Walter Raleigh, go for it. And it's like, we will. And so we did.
You did, yeah, looks good. Cool. Anything else maybe listeners should know about the SHE3, Southern Hemp Expo 3?
Well, I think those who've been in the hemp industry know that it's been really driven by the CBD and cannabinoid side for years now. And when I got into this, it was really fiber and grain. I wasn't even familiar with CBD back in 2012, and then all of a sudden here came CBD. But now with the bottoming out of CBD in the marketplace and people freaking out about we can't make any money in the hemp industry, well, fiber and grain is where it's going to be at. And we can see the transition here where we've got a lot more fiber and grain exhibitors on the floor and people that are working towards that space. And I think that those of you that are out there that's what you look at industrial hemp as being, that actually now is becoming more of a reality. We're heading that direction, and I think that this is really just the starting point of our industrial hemp industry here in the United States.
We just need to educate our legislators, right? Because
Right.
they still think they're regulating CBD, but we need them to regulate the fiber and grain industry.
Right, and fiber and grain should have no excessive regulations at all. It should be treated just like corn, soy, wheat, any other regular crop. People shouldn't have to be paying licensing fees or any exorbitant fees, anything related to a fiber and grain crop.
Amen to that.
Yeah, so hopefully over the course of the next few years that regulatory process will work its way out and that you'll see a lot more farmers saying, all right, we'll get back into hemp and we'll grow fiber and grain, and we know that we can expect to make this per acre, and that's going to be more per acre than we're making doing hay or alfalfa or corn or whatever other crop that they're doing.
Cool. Well, Morris, thank you for your time. It's good to see you again. Thanks for having us down here in Raleigh.
All right, thanks, Eric, and good luck to you.
So my next guest is Hunter Buffington. She is the executive director at the Hemp Feed Coalition, which is an organization that you should know about if you don't already. It's this group of extremely dedicated people who are working very hard to make it so it's legal to feed hemp in its various forms to livestock. Because right now it's illegal to do that. You can feed hemp hearts to your baby, but you can't feed hemp to your herd of cattle or your chickens or whatever, and then expect to sell those on the market. So these people are trying to change that, and there's a lot going on in that space now. And so Hunter was there. She gave a great presentation on the expo stage, and like I said earlier, she had a panel discussion with Chad Rosen from Victory Hemp that was moderated by the one and only Doug Fine. I did meet him for the first time, and yeah, he seems to be a fine human being. Anyway, I caught up with Hunter, we sat down, and we had the following conversation. So I am here with Hunter Buffington at the Southern Hemp Expo in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hunter, welcome back to our podcast.
Excellent. Hi, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how's the expo going for you so far?
I mean, first of all, it's exciting to be seeing people in 3 dimensions, not just on computer screens. So that's really exciting. And I don't get to obviously travel as much because of COVID. So it's nice to be in the southern states and get a snapshot about what's happening here.
So you are the executive director of the Hemp Feed Coalition, and I imagine there's a whole lot going on right now. What's happening?
Yeah, so the Hemp Feed Coalition is still working towards additional applications for hemp byproducts to be considered as animal feed ingredients. We're working through and developing a response right now to FDA Centers for Veterinary Medicine on the application that we submitted in 2020. That's the hemp seed cake and meal for laying hens application. And I'm really hoping that we'll be able to add some small ruminants to that application around the end of the year. But we'll see. Lots of work to be done.
You need to get approval for every species and every variety within the species.
Yeah, so we start with the ingredient, and then we determine its homogeneity, so that's its nutritional composition, its contaminant composition, and what the parameters of those are, so that it can be used to determine what is an approved ingredient. So once we create that profile, for example, for the hemp seed cake and meal, we then have to conduct clinical feed trials for the specific animal and the animal category that we intend to feed it to. So hemp seed cake and meal was the first definition that we worked on for those laying hens, and then we have to add species as addendums to that actual ingredient. So we're going to do that for hemp seed cake and meal. With that first submission, we're working on oil. We're investigating hulls as well as sediment and pulp material, and even there's a whole new market for whole plant pellets. So I feel like we make one step forward and then something new arrives on the scene that we have to take a look at.
So many potential markets, though.
Yeah, so many options, and thinking about the animal supplement opportunities for protein supplements with the meal and cake and protein powder, omega supplements with sediment and oil, and then roughage and calorie supplements when we think about silage material. It just presents a myriad of feed solutions in this one crop.
But there are many challenges, and is one of those challenges the FDA?
I mean, yes, there are many challenges, and there's in fact many challenges, I would say, even when we consider agencies and even just FDA themselves. First, the application process is incredibly cumbersome. The clinical feed trials to meet the rigor that FDA CVM expects for us to meet in order to prove safety and efficacy is not only quite challenging because it's very expensive, but the analytical chemistry is also a challenge for all things hemp. So there's a number of barriers just in meeting submission completion. And then we just had some news come out from FDA in regards to the ingredient supplement application from Charlotte's Web.
About? What happened there?
Yeah, so I think most of us in the industry really felt that was in fact FDA's stance, that they were treating cannabinoids and specifically CBD as a drug in their expectations of the application process and in the concentration levels that they were showing concern about with CBD specifically. And to provide a little bit of clarity, when we think about compliant hemp material, we're concerned about THC. So we're well equipped to handle concern over THC. We have analytical methods to address THC, but when we start looking at CBD and then all of these other byproducts, we don't have an approved method, or oftentimes even an method that we can use in order to quantify those cannabinoids. So that in and of itself is challenging. But when FDA came out and said that they consider CBD to be a drug, it has incredible implications for the industry, because they also said that they would not consider it as a food because it was already patented as a drug. So what does this mean for the grain industry when cannabinoids are naturally occurring in trace amounts? By the way, that is in fact FDA's words in recognition of generally recognized as safe applications for oil, hearts, and protein powder so people can eat it. So it's very concerning, and it's also adds just another layer of confusion.
So there are trace amounts of cannabinoids in the grain?
There are typically trace amounts of cannabinoids in the grain. When we've done research, what we've seen is that if you get high concentrations of cannabinoids, it's generally because the seed wasn't clean. There's leaf or flower detritus that's included when those seeds are crushed for the oil. But we also see that there's measurable amounts of CBDA in our hemp seed oil. And this is not a bad thing. We know that we have an endocannabinoid system. We know every mammal has this system, and that this is probably, in my opinion, should be considered as a daily required nutrient instead of a pharmaceutical drug. So we're finding ourselves in this very strange position of how do we talk about cannabinoids as naturally occurring? And when we try and have those conversations, not only is FDA confused, but when we have conversations about Delta 8 THC, it breeds even more confusion when we try and have these conversations about cannabinoids. What's a naturally occurring cannabinoid?
All of them, right?
I mean,
all of them.
At a certain point, yes, but Delta 8 from CBD is absolutely a chemical change.
Right. In my opinion, that's not one. Like that
Yeah.
whole Delta 8 conversation frustrates me very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of undermines everything that the hemp industry has been working towards for years.
It feels to me like we took a step backwards in the education level of our regulators and legislators. When I try and have conversations about hemp, a lot of times they'll nod enthusiastically and say, "Oh, we talk about Delta 8 all the time," and that's not what I'm trying to talk about. But it's unavoidable. We
Right.
have to figure out how to talk about it.
Yeah. When I was out in Montana on the road trip this summer, the guys from Victory Hemp Foods, I think it was Ben Raymond who said it. And he
Excellent.
was angry, and he's like, "We're making food, not edibles." And
Right.
it's like right there, that sort of, to me, crystallizes the issue because they're making food.
Yep.
Yeah. So what can people, farmers, listeners, politicians, policymakers, what's the way forward? What can we
Yeah,
do?
I love that question. I think for many of us in the hemp industry, and I'm not going to say anything new to your listeners or to you when I say become advocates, become educators. Make sure that when we're having conversations that the legislators and regulators know that what we are talking about is hemp grain, that we're talking about what has been grown for food and feed, has been grown around the world for thousands of years for this purpose. And that
Maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands.
yes, depending on the continent, absolutely. So when we start thinking about the hemp industry, and like I said, we've taken a step back, and there's a lot of folks that only think CBD and only think Delta 8 when they hear the word hemp. And obviously, the fiber environment is changing amazingly in the hemp industry, and we've got the grain aspect, which we can eat as humans, and it's absolutely a healthy food source
Right,
for a
but
population that's
But you can't feed it to
exponentially,
your
right.
flock of chickens or
right.
whatever.
But we,
Yeah.
we can't feed it to our animals, and those protein markets and omega supplement markets, that is the future of hemp grain. And so we need to do a good job of having that conversation and not be scared to talk about cannabinoids. I think that's the other thing that I would really suggest to the listeners is that we have to be able to talk about cannabinoids, and we have to be comfortable with it. But take an opportunity and find out a few key facts, and then share those with your legislators. And know that in my experience in talking with regulators, they want to regulate it too. There's as much frustration, in my opinion, on the regulatory side because we can't regulate what is absolutely a food product. They know how to regulate food and feed, and they're in an awkward position of not being able to do that either. And there's so many products on the market.
the thing about CBD being a pharmaceutical drug now, is that like forever, or can that be changed? Is that like something that we can redefine at a legal level?
So I think that's really the only opportunity that we're going to have to really address this. FDA, for many of us, we always thought that that's what they felt, but we could not get them to confirm it in public or on air. And so,
is that because they're captured by the pharmaceutical industry, or like what's the money doing there?
Well, I mean, certainly there obviously was a lot of motivation and resources to drive forward with an Epidiolex application and get that patent secured right out the gate. I mean, that was absolutely happening while we were still trying to figure out how to run hemp programs in our states. So they absolutely got the jump on the industry. I think.
And that was derived from a marijuana
it
variety,
is, in
not
fact,
actually hemp, right?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Eric. It's really interesting when you look at the patent process and how that actually happened, because it is CBD derived from a high THC plant, which is technically marijuana and not a hemp plant. And then it was isolated to the molecular composition. And so the patent is on the CBD molecule. There's so many problems inherent with everything that I just said.
I can't
when we think of a
understand how
food.
you can patent something that is naturally occurring. Doesn't
So,
make sense
but
to me.
you can't patent a plant, right? So the patent is really in the synthesis of
Like
that
the
molecule,
process?
isolating,
Okay.
right, that molecular weight. And this is where we as an industry have an opportunity to start clarifying our own definitions. And I absolutely believe in better living through chemistry, but if it's a botanical extract, you can't patent a plant, right? You can't patent the hemp seed itself. And that is a great way for us to begin to talk about cannabinoids, that we know cannabis plants have cannabinoids. And if it's naturally occurring in the plant, then that is a food or a supplement pathway. If you have to synthesize it or isolate it or somehow chemically manipulate any part of the process, then at that point, that's a patentable process. And that would absolutely, in my mind, put it in the realm of a patented pharmaceutical. But this is, in fact, a plant. And even botanical extracts, this is part of the supplement world. This is nothing new to hemp
Right.
as a crop. So there is some guidance there for us as well. But I don't know why it is that FDA is so concerned about CBD. But the reality is that we now in the industry, and I'm speaking for myself looking at this as food and feed, we're not only dealing with THC as a compliance issue anymore. We now have THC and CBD as compliance concerns. What happens when next week CBG or CBN or another CB derivative or molecule comes out that FDA is concerned about? This is a very concerning pattern that is being set. And this is, again, why we need to empower our legislators and our regulators to say, we're ready, this is a plant. We know what to do with the plant. We know what to do with the crop. You guys absolutely need to manage drugs and let us figure out how to feed the world
Right.
with this plant.
Is something that can be done at the state level, like through departments of agriculture, or?
So cannabis has often really been a state-driven initiative. You see that with a lot of the state hemp plans that came out in 2014 with the very first hemp in the Farm Bill in 2014. So I think that there is a moment in time when there was optimism, and I was optimistic that we weren't going to have to do it state by state, that we were going to be able to work with the federal agencies, that USDA and FDA were going to find a way to help us, bring the supply chain online. And what we're seeing now, and even for me, USDA is very supportive, funding cattle projects at Oregon State University with Dr. Bayanez, feeding pulp material, post-extracted pulp material to cattle. At the same time, we have FDA saying that they won't consider a feed application unless we really understand what is happening with the CBD that they consider a drug. So what has been happening is the states are reaching out and they're saying, how do we do this? They have concerns over feedstock. We have some serious issues that we have a solution for in the hemp industry. And so I think as we're looking for those solutions, the states are coming online, and the state departments of agriculture are also more closely connected with their farmers, right? With their hemp farmers. A lot of times they're regulating food processing and food safety. And so they're ready to regulate. That's the impression that I'm getting from my regulators. And so when we talk to our state legislators about bringing those things together, those are the phone calls that I'm getting. How do we do this in our state? Because we've got this material. It's incredibly nutritious, and it's just sitting here. Meanwhile, we don't have feedstock. And so the work that happened in Montana with IND Hemp has been a fantastic opportunity for a state to show leadership. And what I hope is, and I'm absolutely here to have those conversations, because if we work together, then those states, by having similar language, working together to write the rules, we create an immediate opportunity for regional cooperation and to set up the supply chain if we work together. So I do think that it's going to be the states leading the charge. Again, the regulators are ready, the farmers are ready, and my concern is that the cost of meeting all of the requirements to complete these applications, millions of dollars in research monies, that's a burden that's been placed on the farmers, and it's time to move past that. We need to give them some solutions.
Yeah.
And not just another barrier.
Meanwhile, you've got billionaires racing to Mars,
Yeah, I mean, it's competing with each other.
Yeah, right. Maybe they could help solve some issues here.
I mean, any of those billionaires out there, let me know. I've got a great way for you to invest your money in the future of our planet.
And those billionaires can get in touch with you at hempfeedcoalition.org.
Absolutely. And it's Hunter at hempfeedcoalition.org if you want to get right to me. You can also join the Hemp Feed Coalition for just $100 a year to support the work that we're doing. But let me know how I can help you to educate yourself, those regulators, and your legislators. They really need to know that we as consumers are safe and comfortable and want to help them so that we can move this forward. And we're not even talking about carbon, right? That's a whole new opportunity, but we're looking at feeding another 7 billion people in the next 10 years, and we don't have the resources to do that. But hemp is absolutely an option. And it's difficult because I feel like it's almost in the toolbox. It's almost there. So close.
Hemp and crickets, here we go.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Black fly larvae all the way.
We have to just change how we, think about the world.
Yes.
Yeah, the solutions are there, but yeah. Well, Hunter, thank you very much for taking some time with me today.
Thank you, Eric. I really do appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It's always a great conversation. I said that last time. That was really a lot of fun. But I also appreciate that it's an opportunity to talk directly to your constituents and hopefully get them excited to take some action too.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so there's Hunter Buffington from the Hemp Feed Coalition. And seriously, it's expensive to get all of these tests through and to get approval. And it's not impossible, but it's just really difficult because they need to raise a lot of money, So seriously, calling all of you billionaires and millionaires and thousandaires or zeroaires like me, whatever, send them some money. Let's get this done. Because if you think about the implications here, if we were to open up the feed market, it just grows the industry even bigger. It's going to be good for livestock producers. It's going to be good for hemp farmers. It's going to be good for everybody. So let's make this happen. All right? So there will be a link on the show page for this episode to the Hemp Feed Coalition. So check it out. What else is going to be on the show page for this episode? There's going to be a video with Andrew Bish talking about his multi-height harvester. There's going to be an audio clip, not an audio clip, but full long piece of audio of that carbon sequestration panel. There's going to be links to everything. So go there, go to lancasterfarming.com and check that stuff out. And thank you for listening to my show. I feel like I've been talking a mile a minute here. I am sort of under the gun to get all this stuff done. And also today, I am going to be interviewed by Nick Walters from the National Hemp Co-op. So that's exciting. I'll talk more about that in next week's show. And yeah, just look forward to a lot of cool stuff coming your way, hemp-wise, in the next few weeks, months, whatever. I feel like I've struck it rich as far as excellent people go. People who I get to talk to, and we get to share the story of hemp. We get to educate people. So anyway, thanks again for listening. My name is Eric Hurlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper. I sort of say that as a question because that was my old role. My new role is sort of being defined, right? I'm definitely the podcast host and producer. Does that fit neatly on a business card? I'm not sure. Anyway, you can always get in touch with me. Send an email directly to podcast@lancasterfarming.com, and I am usually pretty good at responding. It might take me a little while, but I try to get back to everybody as quick as I can. You can always call my office number and leave me a message, 717-721-4462, and I do like to publish voicemail sometimes, so call me up, tell me stories, whatever. I love it. I love talking to people about hemp. Anyway, there's something else I was going to tell you. No, I guess not. I guess that's it. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Episode 155 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2021 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Hurlock. Any music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shepherd.